The handcuffs are colder than the room. Midnight rain taps against the police station window, steady and indifferent, while the suspect sits under a white lamp that makes every blink feel guilty. Across the table, a paper waits for a signature. One name. One lie. One shortcut out of pressure. And that is where many people lose themselves, not because they are evil, but because fear starts offering relief before truth can find its voice. What do you do when the fastest way out is the wrong way through? This is the test of Fudoshin, the unmoving mind under accusation, noise, authority, and fear. Not a mind without emotion. A mind that can feel the cold steel, hear the rain, notice the panic rising, and still refuse to hand command over to it. This lesson will not teach you how to escape pressure. It will teach you how to stand correctly inside it. The suspect is not standing on a battlefield. He is sitting in a chair bolted to the floor. That is what makes the pressure so clean. No shouting crowd. No chase. No storm except the one outside the window and the one behind his ribs. Just a police station at midnight, the smell of wet coats and old coffee, the buzz of fluorescent light, the rain ticking against the glass like a clock that refuses to slow down. The handcuffs hold his wrists together at the edge of the table. Cold steel has a way of making a man smaller. Not weaker, necessarily. Smaller. More aware of his hands. More aware of the officer's pen. More aware of the door behind him and the form in front of him. The room has been arranged so every object seems to know its purpose. The chair keeps him there. The lamp keeps him exposed. The cuffs keep him reminded. The paper keeps waiting. And fear begins to speak in the language of escape. Just sign it. Say what they want. Get out of this room. Survive the next 5 minutes. That is the first confrontation. Not between the suspect and the officers. Not even between innocence and accusation. The first confrontation is between the part of him that wants truth and the part of him that wants relief. Most people imagine courage as something loud. A raised voice. A dramatic refusal. A heroic sentence delivered with perfect timing. But under authority, under fatigue, under a lamp that makes your own skin look suspicious, courage often looks like something much smaller. A jaw that unclenches. A breath that returns. A pair of eyes that stop darting around the room. A mouth that does not rush to fill the silence. This is why P1, Fudoshin, belongs here. The lesson is not to destroy fear. Fear is doing what fear does. It is scanning for exits. It is counting threats. It is trying to reduce pain as quickly as possible. In some situations, fear can be useful. It can wake the body up. It can sharpen attention. But when fear takes command, it does not ask what is honorable. It asks what is immediate. The suspect feels that command trying to rise. It begins in the body before it becomes a thought. His shoulders creep toward his ears. His throat gets dry. His breathing gets short enough that every inhale feels borrowed. The cold steel of the cuffs presses into the bones of his wrists when he shifts. The officer across from him says something calm, maybe too calm, and slides the confession closer. The paper moves only a few inches. Inside him, it feels like the whole room has moved. This is how pressure works when power is involved. It does not always break the door down. Sometimes it simply reduces your world until one option appears larger than all the others. The room becomes the paper. The paper becomes the signature. The signature becomes the exit. And the exit becomes so bright that truth starts looking like an obstacle. He is wrongly accused, but that fact does not automatically make him strong. Innocence is not the same as composure. A person can be innocent and still panic. Innocent and still tremble. Innocent and still say something unwise because the silence feels unbearable. Innocent and still want to lie, not from corruption, but from exhaustion. That is what makes this shadow so human, the fear and the urge to lie to escape. The lie offers itself as mercy. It says, you can fix the truth later. It says, just make this moment stop. It says, your dignity is less important than getting through the night. And if he is not careful, he will believe it. The danger in that room is not only the false confession. It is the quiet surrender of inner command before the pen ever touches the page. Long before a person signs something, he can sign away his posture. He can sign away his breathing. He can sign away his ability to pause. He can let the room decide who he is. That is where Fudoshin begins. Not as rebellion. Not as attitude. Not as disrespect. Fudoshin under the lamp is the discipline of staying present when pressure wants you to become frantic. It is the ability to recognize fear without making fear the leader. It is the difference between being trapped in a room and being completely owned by the room. The suspect looks at the cuffs again. At first, They are humiliation. Proof that someone else has power over his body. Proof that he cannot simply stand up and leave. Proof that the night has narrowed around him. But a disciplined mind learns to use what is present. The cuffs become information. They tell him where his hands are. They tell him he is still breathing. They tell him the cold is real, the table is real, the rain is real, and the panic is only one part of the room. Not the whole room. Not the law. Not the truth. Not his identity. This is the first small recovery of command, separating what is happening from what fear is predicting. What is happening? He is seated in a police station. It is midnight. Rain is hitting the window. His wrists are in handcuffs. A false confession is on the table. He is being pressured. What is fear predicting? That he will never leave. That no one will believe him. That the only path out is surrender. That a lie can save him. A person without discipline blends those together until prediction feels like fact. He does not say, I am afraid. He says, I have no choice. He does not say, this room is pressuring me. He says, the pressure is reality. He does not say, I want relief. He says, relief must be right. That is how the ego disguises panic as logic. The ego does not always want to win in a proud way. Sometimes the ego just wants to escape humiliation. It wants the officers to stop looking at him that way. It wants the lamp off his face. It wants the rain to be something happening outside again, not a sound measuring every second of his fear. It wants to be seen as cooperative, reasonable, safe. So it reaches for a performance. Maybe he starts explaining too much. Maybe he talks faster. Maybe he agrees with a small thing that is not true because it seems harmless. Maybe he smiles at the wrong time. Maybe he apologizes for confusion that is not his fault. The room rewards this. Pressure often rewards collapse before it rewards clarity. But samurai discipline is not built on pleasing the room. It is built on returning to command. In this cluster, power and law, dignity is tested through posture, speech, and silence. The immature reaction is to let fear choose one of two extremes. One extreme is panic, talking too much, grabbing at any promise of relief, treating every pause like a threat. The other extreme is ego, becoming hostile, dramatic, reckless, trying to win the room through force of personality. Both are forms of losing command. Panic says, I will become whatever they need me to be. Ego says, I will burn the room down with my anger. Discipline says, I will not let this room make me false. That sentence does not need to be spoken out loud to have power. It can be held in the spine. It can be held in the breath. It can be held in the space between the question and the answer. The suspect does not need to become stone. He does not need to pretend the fear is gone. In fact, pretending would be another kind of lie. His heart is still moving fast. His wrists still feel the cold steel. The officers still have authority. The paper is still close enough to touch. Nothing magical has happened. But something important has happened. He has noticed the moment where fear asks for the pen. That noticing is not small. It is the crack where discipline enters. Because the real interrogation is not only asking, did you do it? The deeper interrogation is asking, who commands you when you are afraid? The lamp can expose his face. It cannot define his character. The cuffs can limit his hands. They cannot make his mouth betray the truth. The rain can mark the hour. It cannot decide what kind of man sits in that chair. This is the confrontation, a wrongly accused suspect, under pressure, tempted by the relief of a false confession, learning that the first freedom he must defend is not the door. It is the space inside himself where fear is allowed to speak, but never allowed to rule. Discipline does not begin after you feel calm. It begins in the first second you realize you are about to lose command. That second comes quietly. Not with music. Not with courage rising like a movie scene. It comes when the suspect feels his thumb press against the edge of the handcuff, when the cold steel bites just enough to pull him back into his body, when the officer's pen waits on the table and the false confession sits there like an open door painted on a wall. The room wants speed. Pressure always wants speed. Sign quickly. Answer quickly. Escape quickly. Make the rain, the lamp, the questions, the shame, the fear, all of it stop quickly. But Fudoshin trains the opposite reflex. Slow down before you become false. The first practice is simple, but not easy. Do not chase the first exit fear offers. The suspect feels the sentence rising in his throat. Fine, I'll sign it. Just let me go. It is not truth. It is exhaustion wearing the mask of survival. So he does not speak yet. He lets the first wave pass through his chest without turning it into words. His jaw loosens. His tongue rests. His eyes lower for one breath, not in defeat, but to stop feeding the panic with every face in the room. He names it silently. Fear. Urge to escape. Pressure. Not destiny. Not truth. Not command. Just fear. That naming matters because fear becomes more dangerous when it is unnamed. When it has no name, it becomes the whole room. When it has a name, it becomes one force inside the room. Still powerful. Still uncomfortable. But no longer absolute. The second practice is to anchor the body in what cannot lie. The paper can lie. The accusation can be wrong. The pressure can distort the air. But the body, properly attended to, can return him to the present. He feels the handcuffs. Not as humiliation now. As an anchor. Cold steel. Rounded edge. Weight on the wrists. A narrow pressure where the metal meets skin. The cuffs remind him, my hands are here. My body is here. This is the table. This is the chair. This is midnight. This is rain against glass. A panicked mind time travels. It runs into prison, disgrace, tomorrow's headlines, his family's faces, a life ruined by one signature. Fudoshin pulls the mind back to the square foot of reality it can actually command. One breath. One answer. One refusal to become false. He does not need to solve his whole life under that lamp. He needs to govern the next 10 seconds. So he plants both feet on the floor. That is the third practice. It sounds too ordinary until the room tries to take your body from you. Under pressure, people float upward. Their shoulders rise. Their breathing climbs into the throat. Their eyes lose focus. Their words start running ahead of their judgment. Feet on the floor interrupt that climb. Heel. Sole. Toe. The suspect presses down gently, not to show defiance, but to remind his nervous system that he is still located in a body. The chair is hard. The floor is solid. Rain is falling outside. The lamp is bright, but it is only a lamp. The officers are present, but they are not inside his spine. He sits taller by 1 inch. Not proud. Not theatrical. Just 1 inch more honest. That inch is a ritual. The fourth practice is to shrink the battle. Fear says, if you do not get out now, everything is over. Discipline says, the next right action is smaller than that. The next right action may be to let silence exist for 2 seconds longer. It may be to read the paper without touching the pen. It may be to keep his hand still instead of grabbing at the document. It may be to say, slowly and clearly, that he will not sign a statement that is false. It may be to stop explaining once the truth has been stated. Not a speech. Not a performance. One clean sentence. The undisciplined mind believes clarity must be dramatic to be powerful. But in a room like this, drama can become fuel for the pressure. Too much talking gives fear more places to hide. Too much anger gives the room permission to call him unstable. Too much pleading turns truth into a bargain. So he chooses clean speech. Short. Plain. Controlled. The fifth practice is to respect the pause. In ordinary life, silence feels awkward. Under interrogation, silence can feel like a weapon pointed at the chest. Someone asks a question. Then they wait. The lamp hums. Rain taps the glass. The suspect hears his own breathing. The handcuffs shift against the table with a small metal sound. Fear hates that sound. It wants to fill the room. It wants to talk just to prove it still exists. But a disciplined person learns that not every silence is empty. Some silence is a shield around the truth. Some silence is the mind refusing to be dragged by the collar. So he lets the pause remain. He breathes once through the nose. He feels the cuffs. He checks the paper with his eyes, not his panic. He answers only what he can answer truthfully. That is the sixth practice, separate truth from pressure. Pressure asks, what will make this stop? Truth asks, what can I stand behind when this night is over? Those are not the same question. The suspect begins to understand that the false confession is not just ink on paper. It is a trade. Relief now for consequence later. Quiet now for self-betrayal later. A few minutes of escape in exchange for a voice inside him that may never again trust his own mouth. That is too expensive. So he does not buy it. The handcuffs remain. The lamp remains. The rain keeps tapping its slow fingers against the glass. But the room has lost one kind of power over him. It can pressure his body. It can surround him with authority. It can make the night feel endless. But it cannot make him confuse relief with honor unless he participates. This is the ritual now. Feel the steel. Plant the feet. Let the first fearful sentence die unsaid. Name the emotion without obeying it. Speak only what remains true after the panic passes. Again. 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 That repetition is Shugyo inside Fudoshin, training under pressure, not outside of it. The suspect is not meditating on a mountain. He is not free from fear. He is sitting in a police station at midnight with cold handcuffs around his wrists and a lie waiting for his name. And still, he trains. Because the mind learns command the same way the body learns balance, through small corrections made before the fall becomes complete. A breath before the answer. A pause before the signature. A straightened spine before the room defines him. The cuffs that once felt like proof of helplessness become a bell. Every time the steel touches his skin, it calls him back. Do not rush. Do not perform. Do not lie to escape. Stand inside the pressure without becoming its servant. That is the practice. Not winning the room. Not defeating every accusation in one perfect sentence. Not pretending fear is gone. Only this: when fear reaches for the pen, the disciplined mind closes its hand. The rain does not stop. That matters. Transformation is not the moment the world becomes kind. It is not the officer suddenly leaning back, apologizing, and turning off the lamp. It is not the door opening with perfect timing. It is not the paper disappearing from the table as if truth has finally become convenient. The police station is still the police station. The light still hangs over him, white and hard. The walls still carry that late-night smell of damp jackets, old coffee, and tired authority. The false confession is still close enough for his cuffed hands to reach. The pen still waits with its small, ordinary danger. But the suspect is no longer moving at the speed of fear. That is the first sign. His breathing has changed. Not dramatically. Not like a man who has conquered the night. Just enough. The breath no longer scratches at the top of his chest. It drops lower. It becomes something he can count without anyone else noticing. The shoulders that had been climbing toward his ears settle by a fraction. A fraction can be a victory when pressure wants your whole body. The handcuffs shift against the table. Earlier, that sound made him feel reduced. Metal on wood. A reminder that someone else had control. A reminder that his wrists were not free, that the room had rules written before he entered, that authority could make even an innocent man feel like he had to earn the right to breathe. Now the same sound lands differently. The cuffs are still cold. They are still real. But they no longer tell him who he is. They tell him where he is. Here. In this chair. At this table. At midnight. Under pressure. Still responsible for the next word. Still capable of refusing the lie. That is Fudoshin. Not the absence of the storm. The command of the self inside the storm. Across the table, the pressure changes shape. Maybe the officer repeats the same question in a slower voice. Maybe another silence is left there on purpose. Maybe the confession is pushed forward again, just a little, as though paper can become heavier by moving closer. Before, that motion would have pulled his mind toward escape. Now he watches it. He does not grab the pen. He does not jerk backward. He does not rush to defend every corner of his life in one breath. He lets the document sit there as what it is, paper with words he will not make his own. This is the opposite of the opening scene. At first, the lamp made every blink feel guilty. Now the lamp only shows a face that is tired and afraid, but not surrendered. At first, the rain felt like a clock counting down to collapse. Now it becomes rhythm. Tap. Pause. Tap. Pause. A reminder that time moves 1 second at a time, not in the catastrophic leaps fear invents. He looks down at the handcuffs once more. The cold steel has become a teacher with no kindness in its voice. It has taught him that freedom does not always begin with open hands. Sometimes it begins with a closed mouth. Sometimes it begins when the body is restrained, but the truth remains unchained. Sometimes it begins when a person cannot control the room, cannot control another man's tone, cannot control what has already been written on a form, but can still control whether his name becomes the servant of a lie. He speaks again. Not louder. Clearer. I'm not signing something false. There is no speech after it. No pleading. No extra decoration. No angry performance for an imaginary audience. He does not try to sound fearless. He does not try to win the room with force. He simply lets the sentence stand on its own feet. That is the transformation. Not from afraid to fearless. From reactive to governed. From cornered to present. From desperate for relief to loyal to the truth. Modern samurai discipline has nothing to do with pretending you are above human emotion. That kind of coldness is cheap. Anyone can act numb for a few minutes. Real discipline is harder. It asks you to feel the pressure fully and still choose the action that does not make you smaller. The suspect still wants out. Of course he does. He wants the cuffs off. He wants the rain to be something he hears from the back seat of a car going home. He wants his name cleared. He wants tomorrow not to arrive carrying this night inside it. None of that disappears because he sat taller or breathed slower. But the urge to escape has lost its throne. That is enough for this moment. The room can still threaten consequence. It can still stretch the silence. It can still make innocence feel lonely. But it can no longer convince him that lying is the same as surviving. It can no longer make his fear sound like wisdom. He has found the line. And once a person finds the line, dignity has somewhere to stand. The handcuffs remain on his wrists, but their meaning has changed for the third time. First, they were humiliation. Then they became an anchor. Now they become evidence, not evidence in a legal folder, not evidence for anyone else, but evidence within himself. Evidence that pressure touched him and did not fully own him. Evidence that fear spoke and was not obeyed. Evidence that the coldest object in the room became the thing that kept him awake. That is how transformation often looks in real life. Quiet. Unimpressive from the outside. No applause. No camera movement. No perfect ending. Just a person under pressure making one clean decision, then protecting it with posture, breath, and silence. The officers may not respect it. The night may not reward it quickly. The process may continue. But something has already been defended. There are moments when the world tries to make your character negotiable. It places discomfort on one side and truth on the other. It offers relief like a bribe. It tells you that dignity is too expensive, that honesty is too slow, that silence means defeat, that fear should be allowed to sign your name. Under that lamp, the suspect learns the opposite. The fastest exit is not always freedom. A lie that opens the door can still build a cage inside you. So he sits there, hands cuffed, back straighter than before, rain on the window, cold steel at his wrists, and the confession unsigned on the table. The room still has power. But it does not have command. Fear can shake the body. It does not get to hold the pen. You may never sit in a police station at midnight with handcuffs on your wrists. But you know the room. It appears in an office when blame moves toward you. In a kitchen when someone demands an answer before you can breathe. In a school hallway, a family argument, a court notice, a debt call, a late-night message that makes your stomach tighten. Every life has a lamp. Every life has a paper waiting for your signature, not always a confession, but some small betrayal dressed up as relief. The lesson is not to become cold. It is to become steady. To feel the steel, hear the rain, notice the fear, and still keep your name from serving a lie. Stay with this channel if you're training that kind of command. A disciplined person is not someone who never feels fear. It is someone who refuses to let fear take command.